first meeting of the academic year. I'm Becky Nicolaitis, and I'm here with Andrea Thabit in the back, and Caitlin Parker, who are two of the co-organizers of our group. Our fourth coordinator, Kathy Feely, injured her arm and couldn't be here, but I wanted to just give a shout out to her as well. And I do want to thank Caitlin and Andrea and Kathy for all the work that they've done in helping organize the year for our group and all the hard work that they've put into this. And especially Caitlin for putting together this program this morning. She did all of the heavy lifting on this particular
the water clouds.
yes, literally. So I just wanted to make a few quick announcements and then we'll dive into the discussion. We have a really great program for the coming academic year. If some of you are unfamiliar with our group, we do kind of a mix of panel discussions and then we workshop papers of academic work in progress by people working on some aspect of LA or urban history is usually the focus of our group. So this year we have several of those paper presentations that will all take place in this room. We have a panel in the spring on the Me Too movement in Hollywood, sort of looking at it from a historic perspective and kind of through the prism of LA as a company town. So that should be, I think, really interesting. And then our capstone lecture next April, spring of 2019, is going to be by Max Felker-Cantor on his forthcoming book on the LAPD and the history of race and the LAPD. So I brought in a few hard copies of our schedule if any of you want to grab that. If you're interested and you want to be on our mailing list, there's info about how to do that. You can also find out more info about our group on the website of the Huntington Institute of California and the West. We have a dedicated page on there, and you'll be able to see the program as well as see former videos that we have of former sessions that we've done. There's a thing we did on the sanctuary city movement last year and gentrification and smart growth. There's videos of those prior panels up on the website, and you can also follow us on Facebook and get more info. Just a couple of quick announcements of upcoming events at the ICW. There's some really very interesting sounding programs coming up soon on October 2nd. There's going to be a talk here called California, Birthplace of the Hispanic Conservative Movement. And there'll be another talk on the 10th of October by Miriam Powell on the California dynasty, the Brown family. Another on October 13th called Migrant Letters, the Chinese and Mexican Experience. That one's here at the Huntington. The Miriam Powell is at the USC Doheny Library. And then our next session here will be workshopping a paper by Amy Essington on the Robinsons in Pasadena. So she's looking at race and through the prism of Jackie Robinson's family in Pasadena. And I wanted to, sorry?
For all those,
yeah, they're all here. And if you are interested in coming to a workshop, this kind of are academic-ish sessions, and we ask people to read the papers before coming so that we can have a good, vibrant discussion over the work under consideration. And I also just wanted to do a quick shout out to a couple of books that have just recently come out. This literally came out a couple days ago. It's called City of Segregation by Andrea Gibbons on LA, and it looks like a really good book. It's by Verso Press. And then one of you guys brought Lionel Pasteur's book, State of Resistance, which I think is a really important book on the kind of flipping of California from, I guess, Republican to Democrat. So,
right to Latino.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That is more accurate.
Multi-ethnically.
And
You
then
can say that.
I know.
I also just want to mention that if you are interested in getting a pass to the grounds afterwards, you can pick that up from the Munger security desk, which is just right across the way here. They'll have passes there. And as always, I want to extend a huge thanks to Bill Deverell and the Huntington ICW for underwriting our group. And just so you know how this is working, we're going to go till about 12, and then at 12 we'll stop, and there'll be salads in the back. You're all welcome to, even if you didn't RSVP. Just there's always, we have way more food than we can eat, so just help yourself in the back. Just from Green Street, it's all really good, and we can continue the conversation over lunch.
The October sessions, there were 3 of them, they're not on the Alley History.
That's
thing.
right, those are ICW events, so if you go
Okay.
to the ICW website, there's a lot of, yeah, oh yeah, Andrea.
I have one announcement for another event coming. On October 3rd at LACMA, there's an event that the Future of Cities Los Angeles is putting on with LACMA, or at LACMA. And they've been focusing on civic leadership in Los Angeles and what the future will hold for Los Angeles. So they're connecting current leaders, movers and shakers, and younger up-and-coming people, and having this very large conversation. They're titling this The Scene. There's tickets available online. You can ask me for more information. I can forward you the information. But they're going to have Josh Kuhn, who is a professor at USC, a MacArthur Fellow, and he's presented here with our group before. Bill Devil, who's the director of the ICW, will be there. There'll be city councilmen. There'll be Christopher Hawthorne, who's now working for the city and used to be the architecture critic for the LA Times, and some other people you may not have heard of. But it's supposed to be this very engaging event where we talk about what the problems of LA are, what the challenges are, and what the future might hold, and how we can come together to lead the city and for the future. So if you have any questions about that, that's October 3rd at LACMA. It's called The Scene, so you can ask me after.
Are there any other announcements people want to make for LA Orient? There's so much going on. Anyway. Okay, so I will do the introductions, and then I'm going to turn it over to Caitlin, who's going to be moderating the discussion. So our panel today on the 2018 election really does bring together, I think, some of the leading voices on LA, California, progressive politics, and we're just so happy that you all agreed to come and be part of this discussion here. Caitlin, as I said, is going to be moderating. Caitlin is a PhD student at UCLA. She's writing her dissertation on the Tom Bradley administration and knows a lot about all of this stuff, so I think she's perfectly positioned to be moderating. So just to introduce our panelists, let's see, Torie Osborn, I'll go down this direction. Torie Osborn is Principal Deputy for Policy and Strategy for Supervisor Sheila Kuehl. She has a very long and illustrious career as a progressive activist, guiding some of the nation's key nonprofits through such important issues as the AIDS crisis, LGBTQ rights, and economic justice. She's a top policy advisor for Supervisor Kuehl, where she focuses on economic equity, human rights, raising the minimum wage, and initiatives on women and girls, among other issues. Prior to her current position, she served as Deputy Mayor for Neighborhood and Community Services for Mayor Vera Ragosa, where she worked on civic engagement, immigration reform, homelessness, and poverty policies. And she also served as the Executive Director of the Liberty Health Foundation, and a lot of other things were resume is truly impressive. And she received her MBA from UCLA. Sherry Bebitch Jeffe is a familiar face and voice for a lot of us here in LA. She's professor of public policy communication at USC and a political analyst for NBC4 LA. She writes regularly and comments on American and California government and politics in the state, national, and international media, including MSNBC, the BBC. I've heard you many times on KPCC, and a lot of other outlets. And along with her husband, Douglas, who's also here, she writes regularly.
Here we go. Hi, dear.
They write regularly for the California political blog called Fox and Hounds. And prior to her post at USC, she taught political science at Claremont Graduate University, Loyola, Marymount, and Pittsburgh College. And her PhD is from CGU. Fernando Guerra is professor of political science and Chicana studies at Loyola Marymount and is the founding director of LMU's Center for the Study of Los Angeles. He's served on numerous standing commissions, blue ribbon committees, and ad hoc task forces for the city of LA, the state of California, and various regional bodies in Southern California. He's published widely on state and local government, as well as on urban and ethnic politics, and has appeared also frequently on national, international, and local media outlets. And I know many of us have seen his op-ed pieces in the LA Times. His PhD is in political science from the University of Michigan. At the end of the table, Marilú Guevara serves as executive director of the League of Women Voters of Los Angeles. She was born and raised in Compton, received her BA at UC Irvine and an MA in political science at Cal State Long Beach. She's had a distinguished career in public service, working at Compton High School, helping prepare students for higher education, working with mayoral and Senate level campaigns, and get out the vote grassroots efforts. And she currently serves on Action Civics LA Partners Board and is a member of the LA County Community and Voter Outreach Committee in addition to her work for the League of Women Voters. So we're so happy to have you here.
Great. So yeah, thanks so much to our panelists for joining us tonight and to all of you. So we'll have about 45 minutes for the panel, and then we'll open it up to audience questions. As we know, California is poised to be a key state in the 2018 midterms. It's home to at least 10 swing seats, nearly half of the 23 that Democrats would need if they were to capture the House in November. So the general questions that I've posed for the panelists are what are the prospects for California voters in hoping to flip congressional seats in the midterms? Are there particular races that reflect changing demographics or political dynamics in the state? And then more broadly, how has the election illuminated political divides in Los Angeles and California around issues such as immigration, the environment, and the economy? And then finally, what divisions have emerged within the Democratic and Republican parties as they seek to mobilize voters, and what role might state ballot measures play in driving turnout? So these are broad questions, but I'm hoping the panelists will draw on their own experience and expertise in responding to various aspects of them.
The hat that I'm really mostly wearing today is that I took a bunch of people, it turned out to be 160, to Las Vegas to door knock for Hillary in 2016. We knocked on 25,000 doors, and then the election happened, and that group decided to stay together, and we became Team TO at Resist and Rise. And we have met, there's like 300 or 400 people on my list, but we're one of the hundreds of pop-up resistance groups that fly under the radar. You may have heard of Indivisible, you might even have heard of Sea Change, Karen Bass's Political Action Committee. We are one of a gazillion organizations across the country that I think, and this is really my main point today, is remaking politics in America quietly, under the radar, away from the pundits and the horse races that you're hearing about. So, what my group has done, we partnered with Sea Change, Karen Bass's Political Action Committee, for 18 months. We targeted the two closest districts. We're mostly West Side, mostly women, mostly white, not exclusively, but mostly, which, again, kind of the resistance is. And so we focused on CD25. Steve Knight represents that congressional district. It's Northern LA County. It's the only Republican remaining California congressional district that's Republican. And CD48. We were going to do 49 when Isis was there, but Isis dropped out, and it's farther to drive there anyway. So we took Dana Rohrabacher's district, which and Harley Ruda is the candidate. So we have been door knocking in these two districts in CD25 for 18 months, monthly. In Palmdale, Lancaster, which is the Democratic vote-rich section, it is also the low-income, African-American, Latino, lower turnout district in midterms. folks voted for Hillary. They had no idea Steve Knight was a Republican. They had no idea he was against the ACA. They knew nothing about him. And we have been spending 18 months, we and lots of other people, educating voters and organizing and mobilizing voters in CD25. And then starting about 6 months ago in CD48, largely Huntington Beach or Costa Mesa, don't ask me why. Huntington Beach, I think it's closer. Anyways, I have things to say about the voters in those districts. They're very different. They're very different districts. I'm not going to go into the details of it now, but that's really what I bring is the lived experience of having been a, angry voter who worked hard for Hillary and who has been active in the so-called resistance and in remaking the Democratic Party from the ground up, sort of repopulating and remaking it. And I'll talk more about that later, but what I will tell you is that the Democratic Party, and I don't care who you support in it or whether you were on the Hillary side or the Bernie side, the Democratic Party in California does not have the infrastructure that in any way matches this upsurge of civic grassroots energy. We are too busy winning, trying to win, to figure out like who's going to run for the chair of this or that Dem club. There's a lot of new Democratic clubs that have been started, and there have been a lot of Democratic clubs that have been completely revivified by this energy. And then there's a lot of people who haven't been going to Democratic club meetings at all, who are centrist, former Republicans, or declined to states, who are active knocking on the door. This is not, I wouldn't even call it a movement, but the civic engagement is not a left-wing Tea Party. This is a mistake if people think it is, although it's 10 times bigger than the Tea Party ever was. And it is way beyond individual chapters, and many people are members of my group, they're members of Indivisible, and then they might be members of the Heart of LA, the new Women's Democratic Club. It can't really be captured in simple punditry, but it is active. And I want to, so I'll give you one more example. My group, is one of many, but we know our districts because we've been going there for 18 months, and we know what we're looking at in terms of voters and voter outreach. And I will tell you, these are districts that have been ignored by the Democratic Party. Harley Brutus, the candidate in CD48, ignored because the Democratic Club of Orange County was kind of small and marginal, and people didn't know that the Democrats were going to vote for Hillary Clinton by 22,000 votes. I mean, all of Orange County, not just in this district. And so they haven't kind of found each other, and they are now mobilized, and I think that seat will flip because of that. It's 50-stat district. I'll do more details later. In CD25, it has been a traditionally Republican congressional district. The demographics have shifted in several ways. Young families are moving in there because it's too expensive to get a house in Los Angeles. African Americans, there's like a diaspora from South LA, from Venice, from formerly African American communities in LA County, out to the Antelope Valley, and Latinas. The demographics are, I think it's 25%, it's like 37% Latino, 18%. I don't have them in my head, but I'm sure Fernando does. But my point is that the demographics have shifted, but not the political organizing. So we've been registering a lot of voters. People who were registered voted for Hillary, but then they voted for Steve Knight, or they didn't vote down ballot because they weren't connected. And we've been connected, not we and labor and lots of people have been, Sheila and a lot of people have been door knocking in that district. It's going to look different. In the primary, there were 172% more Democrats voted in CD25, Steve Knight's district, in the primary than ever before. Well, than in the last primary, 4 years ago, the last midterm primary. You just wait. I believe Katie Hill, although she's young, she just turned 30. She's never run for office before. I believe she's going to win just sheerly on the momentum of her campaign, which has galvanized people. She's from the district, her dad's a cop, her mother's a nurse, she raises goats, she has a small farm. She's worked in people assisting the homeless. PATH, for those of you who are in that field, it is the preeminent, one of the 2 or 3 preeminent homelessness survey organizations for like 10 years. She's terrific. And I mean, the idea that a first-time young woman candidate could win in kind of formally, you know, in Simi Valley, hello, it is because of the early organizing. So that's my main message here. Organizing matters. And my final point, and then I will shut up, about all of this is organizing matters, but what you're seeing with this so-called resistance, it doesn't really capture the civic uprising because, as I say, that is a sort of a left-wing term, and this goes way beyond left-wing. This is like, if you think decency is partisan, that's what folks are fighting for. Democracy, decency, it's like fighting to keep the wolf from destroying everything that we care about. So the last thing that I would say is, it is very consciously long-term. Like the far right that spent years, decades, organizing to take power, and here we are, right? They have power, they have complete power politically. This effort does not just think about this election. This sort of blue, whether it's Code Blue or Indivisible or any of the groups you've heard of, or maybe the groups that you haven't heard, they're thinking not just about this midterm and not just about 2020. But they know if we don't win the midterm, if the Democrats do not take back the House, we have no chance of decency. So it's a kind of a mortal struggle. Then 2020, the Senate, but here's the thing. This group, and I mean these groups, these people want to turn everything blue. As long as the Republican Party is in the hands of its extreme radical right wing, they want to make the Democratic Party a vehicle for liberty and justice for all, for fighting back these minority views. It's a majoritarian, but it's not, like I say, this is not a left-wing group of people, and it's really important that people not see this as the Tea Party of the left, because it is not. It's much more, I don't know, it's more broad. I'm sure there's words for it, I'm not a political scientist. So the goal, people's goal, is to turn every congressional district in California blue. So they are organizing, building infrastructure, building leaders, having conferences, doing, 2 resistance boot camps in CD4, where Jessica Morse is a 5-generation ranch family that was taking on McClintock. She's not going to win, but she will energize, build, and maybe she'll win next time. Maybe she'll win the time after. He's never lived in the district. He doesn't know the people of the district, and she's lived in it the whole time. So there's a long-term vision here that I want to make sure people understand. It's not just about 2018. It's about taking our country back from the bottom up. No, there's more I know. I know lots about 2018 and 25. And we'll go back to that, but that's about all I know.
There will be a quiz. I guess it's my turn, and Torie may have brought activism and optimism. I bring cynicism. I'm speaking, I guess, for my colleagues, all of us simple pundits, about what's going on here. As Caitlin asked us to think about those 4 questions those 4 basic questions that she outlined. And what I thought I'd do is just quickly go through my views, and hopefully we can spend our time in interactive discussion and having fun games with question and answer. I much prefer that to hearing myself pontificate. But in any case, whatever I might pontificate about today, in today's absolutely mercurial political environment, could easily be outdated or maybe even out and out wrong before I even finish my remarks. It takes one tweet to upturn conventional wisdom. So I will say this to begin. The tectonic shift in the politics of the Me Too era, and I'm sure we're going to delve far more deeply into that, as exemplified on the national level by what's going on now in the Ford Kavanaugh debate, dust-up, if you will, is in line to have a truly dramatic impact on California's political landscape this November. Torie, I think, in outlining what she outlined, and the opponents, mainly women, of Republican incumbents, I think made that point without having to hit us over the head with hammers. And, remember, if it changes the Golden State's political landscape, we're 12% of the nation's political landscape. We're going to have some influence that we may not have been thinking we would have before. So let me just briefly attack those questions. The first one was, what are the prospects for California voters helping to flip congressional seats in the midterms? Are there particular races that reflect the changing demographics and the political dynamics of the state? Torie, by and large, covered the specifics of it. And I'm sure by now we know that in order to take control of the House, the Democrats have to flip 23 seats. And Torie mentioned 10 seats. There are 7 that are really possible, and 3 others that are kind of on the knife's edge, if you will. So, I mean, we could be responsible, as she said, for about almost a half of what is necessary to change those seats. And remember, if perchance this ends in a 50-50 tie in the Senate, guess who gets to organize? Mike Pence becomes the deciding vote, and the Republicans will get to organize once again. I think it was Torie kind of mentioned the fact that Orange County went Democrat. It went Democrat for the first time since 1936. Wow. And I think probably we'll talk a bit more about the political and demographic changes that accounted for that. But you have to remember, Orange County, politically and demographically, is an orange county anymore. The East Coast media still insists upon characterizing Orange County as, this Neanderthal, old white male conservative Republican Party. They have it mixed up with the National Party, I think, at this point in time. It isn't the case anymore. And if the Democrats in California understand that and can take the 5 of the 7 seats that are in Southern California, 4 of which are in Orange County, get up there to McClintock, get up there to Valadeo, do unite. We are the gateway for flipping control of the House. So that's my response to the first question. The second one was, the question kind of puzzled me a bit, and this is where I got a little smart.
A little bit?
I'm holding back for now, but wait till you're up. I may not be able to get more. I may have to take to Twitter, Fernando. Anyway, we just know one another way too long. The question was, how have the congressional races eliminated political divides in California over issues such as immigration, economy, environment? Now, for this, I have to answer that question with some questions that I have myself, and maybe, hopefully, my fellow panelists and you all can help me cite this all out. I don't think they've illuminated. They may have further illuminated differences. They may further illuminated divides, but that's what the adversarial system of politics is all about, and like it or not, we have an adversarial, and have almost always had an adversarial political system. And what are the political divides? Are there true political divides anymore? What does it mean? What's the definition of political divides? These days, it seems to me that economic and social and perhaps particularly cultural divides are key. And issue stances, I think, maybe a part of that, but there's really no iconic definition, one solid, one unified definition of what is political anymore. And it may not even be that it's the political divide that is driving our politics today. What I see happening in this election is that issues are taking a back seat to personality, to character, to trustworthiness or perception of trustworthiness. I mean, in many places, this election is flat out a referendum on the character and the behavior of the President of the United States. And you can see it in the ads that are now going up on television. Think about that. You know, what about political violence? Is it, we are as polarized and as partisan as we have ever been. But again, it's not only party identification. It's a whole bunch of other factors, and it's really very difficult to blend at this point in our political environment. Now, what divisions have emerged within the Democratic and Republican parties as they seek to mobilize voters? Well, you know, we've had these divisions, again, based on several factors for quite some time, particularly within the California Democratic Party. We are now experiencing a battle between establishment old school Democrats and the progressive Bernie-crat wing of the Democratic Party. And you can see that dynamic hardcore in the Senate race between our senior Senator Dianne Feinstein and Kevin De Leon, the former state Senate President pro tem. That's a serious test of the clout of the establishment versus the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. And that will have an impact on California political terrain. And the Republicans, well, let me tell you, I have my friends who are traditional conservatives, but who feel frustrated and uncomfortable with Donald Trump and his hard right base appear to be leaving the Republican Party. I think Torie also sort of touched on that too. They're leaving it not for the Democratic Party. They aren't there yet. They are leaving it to re-register as no party preference voters. And nationally, there appears to be a similar dynamic at work. What we're seeing on the Republican side is not so much the kind of ideological division you see in the Democratic Party. What you're seeing is a bloodless coup by the Trumpsters. The Republican Party is now the party of Trumpism. There is no progressive wing making any noise at all. And that may be something that the Republicans will take advantage of and have to take advantage of in the November elections. Now, what is the role of state ballot measures such as the Costa-Hawkins repeal, which is the rent control initiative, Prop 10, or the gas tax repeal, and what role might they have in driving turnout in LA and California? Well, you know, the two hot props are Prop 6, the gas tax repeal, Prop 10, the rent control revisions. And you have to understand that the genesis of Proposition 6, which would repeal the gas tax hike, was a Republican Party get out the vote strategy, pure and simple, driven by Kevin McCarthy, the House Majority Leader, who happens to be a representative from Bakersfield in California, the 23rd Congressional District. He knew he needed to gin up Republican turnout in this state and hopefully save those vulnerable Republican incumbents. I mean, here is a state in which the Republicans are now the third party in registration, after Democrats and after no party preference. If Kevin McCarthy wants to be Speaker, and oh, does he want to be Speaker, he's going to have to do everything he can to make sure that he can help minimize Republican losses, and that's really what Prop 6 is all about. But there is opposition from business and labor, and God, the fundraising. Pro, con. Business, labor, the governor, his Democratic allies in the legislature have all organized to prevent the repeal. The governor and Democratic legislators understand that if there is not an additional appropriation, and believe me, we need it for infrastructure, we need it. You've been driving freeways recently, haven't you? You need it to extend it. But if there isn't more money just coming in outside of the budget, that budget's going to have to be carved. And the worry is, even though we are pretty much a one-party legislature, governor, state, that money's going to have to come at least in part, and will come at least in part from social programs and other budget items that really should not be tinkered with. Prop 10, I'm still trying to figure it out. Maybe Torie and Fernando and Mary can tell me about it, but it will allow local governments to once again have more influence over rent control. And it is affordable housing advocates who are leading the charge to pass Proposition 10. And something's going to have to be done in terms of the homeless, in terms of the fact that people can't live anywhere near LA at all. I will tell you that if you want to know what the arguments are for and against, go to the Women Voters site, and also go to a site called Cal Matters, which has a voter guide that is almost as good as the League of Women Voters. I don't feel comfortable saying vote this way because I think this is the way you should vote. Don't vote that way because I think this is the way you should not vote. What I frankly think is that you guys are responsible for deciding what you think is right. It's up to you. I mean, it's just, it is one, the 2018 elections, particularly with regard to where we are as a country and where we are as a state, is probably the most important midterm election we have had since the New Deal. Since the New Deal, but remember that and study up. I know you guys, I don't have to worry about it, as everybody else in the Western world is probably not going to study up. But I would say that for me, the answer to all of those questions is find out, make your decision. And I don't have to tell you to go out and vote, but drag everybody you can out to vote. That's all I have to say for now.
I'm going to defer to Marilú.
So I think I will echo a lot of what's already been said, specifically Torie. Working on behalf and part of a grassroots organization. We have definitely seen a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of excitement and motivation leading up to the local election, particularly after the 2016 election. I think what I will add to that conversation is the League comes from a very unique perspective as it's nonpartisan. So we have seen a lot of focus on issues because we are in Los Angeles. I can definitely speak to the question on ballot measures and particular issues and the divide that we've seen in the different political parties. We have seen motivation and enthusiasm around a lot of local issues. Here in Los Angeles, that would be homelessness, transportation, affordable housing, and I would even say infrastructure, roads. So we've seen a lot of groups, local groups, due to the ballot measure that was Hawkins, Proposition 10, we've seen a lot of local groups mobilize around that issue, try to help, as a way to try to help the homelessness problem and the affordable housing problem. I think as a whole, we've definitely seen a surge in requests to do candidate forums. There is definitely a need for people to get informed or to inform others. Our voter guide requests are through the roof at the state league. They can't keep the publication in-house and they can't print fast enough because a lot of groups are using it as tools to get out the vote. Secretary of State's office has made it so easy in California to register to vote. You can go online, the form has seen an update that makes it even more understandable than it is before. We are pre-registering youth. If you're 16 years of age, the league itself, our league in particular, last year helped register 10,000 high school students that are all pre-registering. Of course, I'll leave that to the Professor Fernando Guerra and Sherry to see how that will at some point impact turnout, if it will. That's always the question. But we've definitely seen, not only from traditional voters, but also from underrepresented communities and interests. They are the ones that we have seen at the league are more likely to attach their vote to a lot of the national rhetoric, like immigration, and I would even say affordable housing locally here in Los Angeles. They're the ones that see their vote as a way to influence those particular issues, as opposed to, maybe just voting for a Democrat versus a Republican. And that's generally speaking. We have definitely seen a surge in the people that want to run for office. So although I will say, the caveat in that is, a lot of attention goes to congressional races. I would even say state office, state assembly, state senate, but not a lot of attention is going into neighborhood council elections, which I was just in a meeting last week, still have dozens of seats that out of the 99 city councils, they have dozens of seats that go vacant. Because so much attention is going into what is happening nationally that a lot of the conversations aren't taking place about what we can do locally. Aside from those districts that need to be flipped, I think that is probably what we need to have a conversation about moving forward, because we see a surge in registrations, but the question mark on whether that will affect turnout is always a question we seem to have. The league, of course, has seen a surge in requests and information, but we've also seen not a lot of attention go to ballot measures. Like I said, education is something that everybody is seeking around election time. However, we have found that there's not a lot of enthusiasm around the November ballot in terms of the ballot measures here in California. The fact that we don't know, there's I think a total of 8 or 9 ballot propositions, and we only know Proposition 10 and the gas repeal. And even when you ask most people on the street, they don't even know that's on the ballot. So that is definitely a concern. Once again, that might be because we focus so much on national politics or on those particular seats that give us optimism that we can make a change here in California. That is definitely concerning. Now there are other leagues, outside of Los Angeles. There's dozens of leagues throughout the state of California that have seen more interest. For example, the Santa Clarita League is a very new league that went open just last year. And you can say that local politics in Santa Clarita have led to the development of a league there, the race that's taking place there. San Diego has also seen a large increase in mobilization, and the league there has actually almost doubled in size as a result. So while people are becoming more partisan, and I think that is true because a lot of our members are not apolitical. They're very political people, which is the reason why they come to the league. We have seen a lot of interest in nonpartisan resources, nonpartisan involvement that just focuses on issues. I think a lot of people want to turn the TV off sometimes and partisan politics and just want to focus on tangible change that is issue-based, which is why If you ever turn on local news at 6 p.m., you'll see a lot of movement around very, local things that can be tangible and can be changed. I think I'll end on a positive note. I definitely posed a lot of questions throughout my couple of minutes, but I really hope that the fact that we here in California are making it easier for people to vote. We want people to vote. We want people to run for office. We specifically, top party, the Democratic Party has been calling out for diversity. They want women running. And the fact that we've seen throughout the country a lot of LGBTQ candidates all of a sudden get elected in office, those are all positive things. California is definitely ahead of the curve. So our concern at the league is what can we do to make sure that people turn out, and that people run for local government, run for those city council positions, because there is definitely a deficit in leadership locally in terms of women running, and in terms of just diverse candidates from different communities that are underrepresented. So those are definitely questions that I'll pose to the other panelists that are more well-versed on the issues.
David, do you want me to go up there or you want to?
I can
A pleasure being here. I grew up in the Highland Park, so I used to come over here, bike over here all the time. It was one of my favorite places to come. It used to be free.
As was everything. Yeah.
So I want to pick up and really focus a little bit about turnout, because I think all three previous speakers talked about that, and it's whether you're talking about enthusiasm, get out the vote, etc. It becomes very significant. And so why has turnout been so low in California? If you take a look at the state of California compared to most states, we rank at the bottom, 10% in terms of turnout. And there's a variety of different rationales for that. And so what I want to do is take a look at the electoral structure from the progressive era, the lack of reinforcing institutions for participation, and then no ideological distinction as a way that's diluting the vote in California, and what we can do about that. And so many of us, especially here, especially the League of Women Voters, are very familiar with the electoral structures of the progressive era, and progressive, not the way we use the word today, but back in the 19-teens, when that movement spread throughout the United States with people like Teddy Roosevelt and Hiram Johnson. And there was no state that took on those structures more than California, and there was no major city than Los Angeles and its surrounding communities like Pasadena that took on all of those different laws and regulations. And they have structured politics to this day in how we conduct politics, right? And one of them is nonpartisan elections. And in the state constitution, it says that every election, with the exception of the state legislature and Congress, have to be nonpartisan. And so Mayor of Pasadena, Mayor of Los Angeles, when a voter goes to vote, it's not on the ballot whether they're a Democrat or Republican, and they don't know. And it shows that in terms of a study that was just conducted about 2 years ago in how incredibly overrepresented Republicans are on state and local bodies. Because when they go, there are heavily Democratic cities that continue to vote majority Republicans in their city councils because nobody knows a Republican. And they don't even talk about being Republican in their candidate. And the nonpartisan nature of it, it doesn't misinform, it gives no information. And one thing we know in political science is that the number one cue for when you go to vote is partisanship. Okay? And that's what we do. The first thing we do in California politics is take that out. Yeah, totally old school. The second thing is off-year elections. Now, that's not in the Constitution per se, but a vast majority of cities in LA County are off-year elections. Okay? Now, that's beginning to change dramatically for a variety of different reasons, right? But it also has a tremendous impact in diluting the vote. Pasadena, the last time you elected a mayor, the turnout was 19%. Okay? In this election, Mayor, Bogart, how could I forget that great graduate of Loyola Marymount University? He was in there forever, right? And he decided not to run. Okay, so you had a vacancy. And you had all kinds of great candidates. It was an incredibly diverse field. You had a significant African American, Latino, you had young people, you had probably what I would consider one of the best field of candidates running for mayor of Pasadena, a vacancy, etc., and you could only get 20% of the vote, right? At the same time, the city of Long Beach and the city of Los Angeles also had elections that were also vacant. Okay, and they did a little bit better than Pasadena. I know we always talk about Pasadena being more civically engaged. City of Los Angeles outperformed Pasadena that year, as did the city of Long Beach in terms of their turnout. Okay, so this perception about Pasadena being incredibly engaged, we have to re-examine that in a variety of different ways. But at-large elections have a tremendous impact as well. Too many elections. We have way too many elections, right? Staggered terms. And staggered terms is basically what we do in the U.S. Senate, right? The House, every 2 years, they're always up for election. In the Senate, we stagger the terms. It's a very conservative notion to prevent any one red wave or blue wave from completely taking over. The Constitution purposely did that, and it made sense there. There's no reason we have to have staggered terms, but we do, okay? And that has a very, from my perspective, conservative impact. Direct democracy, I see direct democracy as a disguised at-large election, and as Latinos and Democrats started to take over the state legislature, especially in the 90s, and this book that we talked about from Manuel Pastor really chronicles this. You saw the Republicans switch over, instead of making public policy in the state legislature, they made public policy through the initiative, because it's an at-large election where they gained, instead of district elections, that was electing many more Democrats. And then, of course, no directly elected mayor in many cities. Pasadena didn't have a directly elected mayor for most of its history. It's really only recent history that we've done that. Same with Long Beach, same with Inglewood, all these different cities that now have directly elected. So all of these structures, from my perspective, the progressive era, in this new demographic and social and political environment, have led to the dilution of the vote. Okay? And now we're starting to do certain things about that. Next is lack of reinforcing institutions for participation. The decline of local news, all right? I sit on the board of KPCC. We have 23 reporters. We're doing a great job. We have about 500 listeners. No, we have a lot more than that. We have about 5. We are the number one NPR affiliate in America. Okay? Well, we have about 500,000 per day at one point or another. And when you add KCRW to that, we are listening to public radio here in Los Angeles more than any other place. And people think, Angelinos don't care about that kind of stuff. The data is overwhelming. We listen to public radio more than any other in absolute numbers. There are some states like Minnesota, as a proportion, they listen more than we do. But it's been fragmented. Okay, not everyone's listening to KPCC, and you certainly listen to that. There is one thing. There's a station in New York called One New York that is 24-hour local news. Okay, it is run by the cable company there, and they've just announced that they're going to do it here in LA. New York one, excuse me, New York one. And so they haven't given it the name here in LA, but everybody's been calling it like LA one. And of course, you'll have to have Spectrum cable to get it, but it's going to be 24-hour news about local issues in Los Angeles County.
Have you ever watched New York One? I have.
Yeah.
It will at some point, it has at some point, not become so issue-oriented. It, like everything else, has become an orangutan escape from New York City. Yeah. Trust me, because I make it a point.
Yeah,
to watch it when I'm in New York, just to see what's happening. They've got some neat things to do with Broadway,
yeah.
And they do cover probably politics far more than any of the local broadcasts.
Right. And so other lacking, we have the political party, Torie talked about this, it just isn't mobilizing institution that it is historically or many other areas. And I don't want to go through this. Nonprofits are sporadic, but one exception, of course, is the League of Women Voters about this. And leadership is self-serving, that is, they will mobilize when they're up for re-election. They actually sometimes don't even want to mobilize. I have known through my history as not only an academic, but an activist of incumbent Democrats refusing to help or fund voter registration in their district because they don't want, even though the vast majority of voters would be Democrats, they don't want it because they may not vote for them. I've experienced that personally. So all of these things, I think, tend to deflate the vote. Next, one thing that's very recent that I think is excuse me, I think one backwards. That one right here. Okay. This is every year at Loyola Marymount University, we conduct the largest, most comprehensive general social survey in the metropolitan area. It's actually the largest general social survey in urban America. Every year, we interview 2,400 LA County residents about a variety of different issues, all right? We asked this question, a variety of these questions, and what we concluded here is that there are no wedge issues in Los Angeles County. And what I mean by that, from a very political perspective, wedge issues, from most of the people in this room would associate them with Republicans using a wedge issue to mobilize people on a certain behalf. But what I'm suggesting here is that all of these issues are settled in LA County in terms of people so overwhelmingly believe in them that for you to run on any one of these or a variety of them, you won't win, right? And it becomes a non-issue that you get almost every candidate and most of the populations already in favor of these, and they're not wedge issues in Los Angeles. And so what is a wedge issue? Okay, and you'd be hard pressed. A lot of the people usually tell me, I know one is development, housing, et cetera. And like, no, it really isn't, because when we poll on it, everybody says they're all for good development. Okay? Everybody agrees that we want to have responsive development, et cetera. And of course, it's always situational, neighborhood by neighborhood. Nobody disagrees when we poll it. It's in the 90s that we should have responsive development, right, et cetera. And so that's really not a wedge issue. It could be in a very situational place and a particular council district or what have you, but region-wide it isn't. We've become a one-party state in Los Angeles County. Torie mentioned the 25th district is the only remaining Republican district. There's actually two others that have a little sliver that go into LA County. The 39th, about 10% of the 39th district from Orange County goes into LA County, and the 23rd, 1% of the 23rd district goes into LA County that has like 200 people, right? So if Steve Knight loses, which I think he will, and the Ed Royce seat is captured by a Democrat, Cisneros, the last poll had them neck and neck. 99.9% of LA County will be represented by a Democrat in Congress for the first time in its history. And that shows the complete transformation of LA County as blue as this data. Okay? But this has a danger too. You have to understand that in a race for mayor of Pasadena, mayor of Los Angeles, mayor of whatever, or in a congressional race, especially with the top two, you are going to get Democrat versus Democrat, liberal versus liberal, and it's like, what is the difference? Rhetorically, people have always said, oh, there's no difference between them. I've always disagreed, etc. I'm beginning to agree more and more. Okay? Eric Garcetti, Wendy Gruhl. Okay? On policies, there was absolutely no difference. Okay? On all of these policies, all 10 of them, they were on the same side. Okay? On almost everything. Right? And so there is that, so we are getting to that stage as a one-party county, and pretty soon we almost are a one-party state.
We are.
What is it now? Only 27% are
Both
registered.
NPP and, Republicans are somewhere around 25%, with
25.
NPP having that decimal point
Right.
ahead.
Right.
And Democrats are something like 44.
Yeah. In LA County, only 18% of registered voters are Republican. Right?
What
In
about
the
LA
city, in LA City, 12%.
Oh my.
Only 12% in the city city of 4 million people, only 12% are registered Republican. They're disappearing and disappearing. In fact, here's another little bit of data. In the first 6 months of the year, of all the registrations in the state of California, okay, only 3% of Latinos registered as Republicans.
Oh my.
So everybody who registered for a whole year, got surprised. I don't know who